Hi everyone, so welcome back to Rebirth TV. This is Stacy Benton, and we are launching our Rebirth experience and the Rebirth A Gift Series. This is part one, which is conception, and this series correlates with the novel Rebirth a Gift. And if actually this is your first time, listening, tuning in, definitely thank you. Appreciate you for spending your time. But definitely go back and watch the other videos. It will educate you on complex trauma and just give you more inspiration and motivation to continue your healing journey. If you are just searching for information to educate yourself, this is absolutely where you need to be. We are in part one of conception, and we were actually going over emotional trauma or childhood trauma, and that was on the previous video. And so what I'm going to do is shift a little and shift the screen, and we're going to go back to what we were actually discussing, which is, I kind of stopped here, how emotional abuse in childhood changes the brain. And this is a very interesting article because it shows you that emotional trauma can absolutely change your brain functionality. It can also cause brain damage, which adversely impacts you as an adult if you have experienced trauma, but also impacts your child if your child has experienced some level of trauma. So you really I want to create a sense of urgency towards your healing. And simply because the longer you remain in this complex trauma cycle, the more damage it's going to do to your brain, your mind, your emotions. So it's very, very extremely vital and critical that you continue your journey to healing and restoration, doing what is necessary to go through the process, okay? So here, this article is from verywellsmind.com. Childhood emotional abuse and neglect can result in permanent changes to the developing human brain. These changes in brain structure appear to be significant enough to potentially cause psychological and emotional problems in adulthood, such as physiological disorders and substance misuse. Around 14% of Americans report experiencing emotional abuse or neglect during their childhood. Insulting. These are some ways of emotional abuse: insulting, name calling or swearing at a child, threatening to physically harm the child, terrorizing or otherwise making the child feel afraid. Emotional neglect involves failing to meet a child's emotional needs. This can include, so I want to pause here because emotional abuse is abuse in the emotions. So that it's not physical, so it doesn't mean that you're hitting a child or you are, adversely beating or doing some type of physical harm or damage. That could also include sexual abuse, things of that nature. So that's anything that's done to the physical body. Now, emotional abuse is things that threatens the psychological development of the child. So that means that the emotions, the way that they feel, the way that they're actually going to interact in society or interact as a in school and with their peers or other children. So emotional abuse is very damaging to the psychological development of a child. And if you as an adult experienced physical and psychological abuse, then you are definitely have experienced complex trauma. If you just experience one over the other, most likely that's not the case. Sometimes you can have a parent that's very narcissistic, sociopathic, have some mental disability going on, and they may have caused psychological or emotional abuse because of their own trauma. Okay, so if you experience that emotional abuse, then you most likely have issues with developing relationships, connecting with others, difficulties with rejection, building lasting relationships and friendships. Emotional trauma can be very detrimental to your well-being as an adult and as a child. So that's why it's so extremely important that you take care of yourself. It's very ineffective to beat yourself up continuously in that cycle of the trauma and not actually face it or deal with it from a perspective of healing. So if you experience your trauma subconsciously by just negative thought patterns, then most likely you have gone through emotional abuse on some level. And that could be something that could be as little as your mom being very critical of you, or being insulting or undermining of your wishes and how you feel. It could show up as neglect, meaning that you didn't really get the emotional support that you needed. And I'm not pointing this out so that you can blame your parents, okay? Because 9 times out of 10, they are also victims of trauma in some way. Now, I know that this can be difficult to understand now because you are in pain right now. But as you go through your journey of healing and restoration, you will begin to see the patterns and how it's connected. That's why it's so important for you to come through this journey with me. Watch the videos because it's all going to connect for you. Okay? It's going to make the pain slowly diminish. It's going to get less and less and less through your understanding, okay? Through your support, through your uplifting yourself and gaining the knowledge and the education. So if you also experience emotional abuse, you will also have issues again with, it could be just building relationships. That could be at work with love relationships, friendships. You will find yourself in absolute isolation or in a place of stagnation when it comes to so many aspects of your life and your social development. So think about emotional abuse can adversely impact your social relationships. They are connected. Your comfortability with yourself in social environments. Okay? So emotional neglect involves failing to meet a child's emotional needs. This can include failing to believe in the child, create a close-knit family, make the child feel special or important, provide support, and want the child to be successful. And this is emotional needs that your child may have or you may have experienced as a child, that you didn't really feel like people really believed in you, supported you, uplifted you, encouraged you. That's why coming to the channel, watching Rebirth TV is going to uplift you. It's going to take you through your journey so that now you can start seeing yourself in a different lens, not the lens of your parents, okay? Not in the lens of the abuser, whomever it was. It could be a relative, a parent, a friend, a relationship, a person you was in a relationship with. So you want to pay attention to how all of this connects and the emotional needs that you may not have received, and you may have just shrugged it off shrugged it off like, well, I'm tough, I'm strong, which I know that you are strong. Because if you ever endured complex trauma, you're definitely strong. You have a level of resiliency to yourself. However, your lack of emotional childhood needs that you may think that was not so important is now subconsciously impacting areas in your life that I know that you're having high levels of frustration and disappointment as a result of that. And want the child to be successful, and this is a very critical one, especially if you have dealt with narcissistic parents, socially inept parents, traumatized parents, dysfunctional families. And this is one thing that the novel Rebirth a Gift, really exemplifies. So you can see it from a fictional perspective of how sabotaging families can be when they're in a dysfunctional setting. And some of this sabotaging can come very subtle, and some of it is very advert. It's just in your face. So if you have felt like you were cheated, you were cheated out of your full potential because you did not get the support you needed, and you just really just felt like your family or your parents did not support you. And this is all emotional needs. This is emotional neglect. And sometimes we can disassociate from it because you just want it to go away. The feeling of feeling that your family or your mom or your dad really didn't want you to be successful. Or they would say, yes, I want you to be successful. Yeah, go do that. And then you don't feel it. Okay? So really pay attention to this aspect of emotional neglect, because emotional abuse is very in your face. You know when someone is name calling you, threatening you, terrorizing you, abusing you emotionally. But the subtle emotional neglect is very hidden. And this is very coercive in individuals that have narcissism or covert narcissists. And this is narcissism and covert narcissistic dynamics, personality disorders is something that I will be going into as this series develops, because I'm building a foundation for you so that you can now connect the dots for yourself, so that you can stop the traumatic cycle and the generational dysfunctionality, so you can now go forth in being or transforming into the person that you always envisioned, the entrepreneur, the mother, the dad, the grandmother. It's never too late to continue your healing journey and understanding. Now, if you are a victim of child abuse or know someone who might be, call or text the Child Help National Child Abuse Hotline at 1-800-422-4453 to speak with a professional crisis counselor. So there is help, okay? Again, breaking the silence is very vital. Even if you just dial the number and get the support, start the journey or continue the journey. Step out of your box. Step out for yourself. Step out for your child or your children or the child that you want to have. And if your child has experienced it, still call the hotline because there's resources that can help you through your journey. Okay? So thank you.